Bum bum dun 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 dun. The Cartoon Guide to Biology. Let's get this started with right now. Now, firstly, let's get this started with. This is just chapters 11, 12, and 13. The higher organisms, where we get multicellular organisms and a bunch and a lot of reproduction. So let's get this started with already, people. Now let's start off with multicellular organisms. Of course, multicellular organisms haven't existed for a while, but then suddenly a cell ate a cell. The cell that ate the cell then killed the cell that was eaten, and then the cell inside is like, finally I am safe! Oh yeah, burn. Okay, give it to you, burn. Give it to you, burn. Give it to you. I am now at your disposal. Yes, I will turn glucose into ATP, not ATP into glucose. Yes! Anyways, that happened, and apparently that's pretty useful. And eventually, we were able to create those same cells, which made more energy than we literally needed, meaning that they can create multicellular complex systems and communities, and eventually that turned into like tissues, and those tissues turned into organs, organs turned into organ systems turned into organisms, and eventually sometimes, this is pretty weird though, organisms turned into multicellular organisms. So here we go. Multicellularity is pretty important, and it's also probably the next stage in life. Without multicellularity, we wouldn't have brains, we wouldn't be able to sing, we probably wouldn't even be able to experience the world like this. That's pretty much how multicellularity actually works out. Multicellularity is pretty important because of how things seems to work out. Let me explain. Multicellularity was the next step in evolution. Like, without multicellularity, none of this would probably have actually existed. Like, skins work with other cells, and they go ahead and use all this to actually create lots of things. Hearts are created with multicellularity, and all these actually use sugar to keep itself running, using ATP specifically from the sugar. There will be a separate video about ATP later. And that's pretty much it. Next up, we're going to have to talk about reproduction. Reproduction itself is pretty weird for most people. Apparently, some people even say that it's not useful. Like, it's not... Okay, it is useful, but it's not mortal. And using reproduction, we've actually been able to create lots and lots and lots of generations for over 4 billion years, and we're still continuing. Now, reproduction itself used to be like a cell, copy DNA, put DNA in separate compartments, split the compartments, and repeat. And that's pretty much how reproduction happened. Just make an exact clone. However, you actually needed to make a copy of DNA. And once in a while, there's this thing called the DP, the DNA polymerase, and it's the one in charge of literally looking into it, like copying the DNA. However, it needs a starter up. Of course, a primase actually makes a short primer sequence to get the DNA polymerase started, and then the DNA polymerase goes ahead. Now, every once in a while, so DNA polymerase actually makes a mistake. Well, fortunately, most of these it catches, but however, sometimes it just lets it go because they didn't see it. And then, just in case that the DNA polymerase actually didn't get to check it and didn't get everything right, apparently the thing that happens is just that helicase comes into it. A few helicases come into it, and they also double check the work. After they double check the work, they go ahead and make it a 99.9999999% margin, like 0.0000001% margin of error, meaning there's a 99.9999999% is actually accurate. That means like 30 DNA molecule times errors, like 30 versions of A, C, T, G, or U, like 31 of those, and all those are errors, like mismatches, like A to T instead, like it's A to, like someone accidentally put A to C it, or A to G, and or A to, like that's about it, or A to A even, and that's pretty darn bad. And sometimes those mistakes are gone, but then if there are too many of these mistakes, then we get into a literal mutation. For some reason, people actually like some mutants better than others, like X-Men, Wolverine, and the Cyclops. Ah, wait, I don't have laser eyes. Of course, there are also other ways we can actually do this reproduction. Reproduction itself actually comes into two organisms, being the parent, the father, and the mother, coming into this and then starting to create kids. Also, usually kids have traits that are related to the mother or the father, like the son might look more like the father, while the daughter might look more like the mother. Those kinds of things. Which are also why kids look like their mothers and fathers and sometimes even grandparents. Apparently, one I know, Greg Heffley himself, he looked exactly like his great uncle. Wow! And also, there are actually other things that can actually do this. Apparently, there have been things about, I'm just gonna call it X, and X itself has been very stereotypical. Lots of males actually used like sperms to actually use the evidence of sperms and eggs, and then the sperms the ones that are moving, and the eggs the ones that are staying there. Where they've been using it to just say that the sperm carries the seed of the future being. Well, the female just serves as a place, the sperm is the seed and the egg is the dirt. Also, without the dirt, the seed isn't useful. So yeah. Also, however, some people actually just say this a bunch of mansplaining throughout the ages, but well, they're not always wrong. So Gregor Mendel grew up to be a monk, and this Austrian monk actually vowed to preclude his fertilizing other humans, but he bred a large garden of pea plants, and he kept meticulous records. He made sure that plants couldn't self-replicate themselves, self-pollinate themselves, and so they just cut off some mother plants' pistils, and he chose some of them to be female, some of them to be male, by cutting off some plants male parts and other plants female parts, and then once they've been reproduced, he tied bags around them so pollen couldn't get in. And then, of course, he later actually started crossing things. Crossing short plants with short plants always made short offsprings. And crossing tall plants with tall plants, well, some tall plants, but not all, when crossed among themselves, always bred tall offspring. Sometimes they gave short offspring. And then when you crossed a tall offspring with a short offspring, there was 4 times it was always tall. And then if you did the hybrid of each offspring with each other, then there was 3/4 of the plant, 75% were tall, and 25% was short. And so he started calling these genotypes, where there are combinations of 2 letters. They're both the same, but one of them is capital letters and the other one is lowercase letter. The capital letter is dominant, like H. Let's say capital H, then the capital H means tall and the lowercase h means short. If there's at least one capital H in the genotype, then you basically be that. So capital H, you're tall, capital H, lowercase h, you're still tall, and lowercase h, now you're short. The shunned one. And apparently there's actually a 50% chance of having capital H and lowercase h, and another 50% chance of being tall or short. So it's a 25% chance of being tall and short. But then again, there's also another rest of 25% chance of getting capital H, and another 25% chance of lowercase h. So technically it's like a 50-50 chance of getting tall and short, unless you've got yourself a mutant in there. And you can use this for other things too, but I'm actually not going to get into all this. And so that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, one more thing I'm gonna mention, chromosomes have X and Y versions, XX, if they're 2 chromosomes, XXs are equivalent to girls and XYs are equivalent to boys. So apparently, and the sperm itself has XY and the egg itself has XX, so technically the sperm actually decides, depending on randomness. But that's about it. That's all I'm actually going to talk about. Next time, we're going to talk about evolution, and then we're going to talk about classification. So until next time, Sean out, peace, and always, drum roll, please! Wear a helmet.